What do most Fortune 500 executives have in common? After more than 150 conversations with executives from companies like Disney, Amazon, Netflix, and Google, I've learned that sports is a common denominator. Some of our guests' athletic experiences earned them a place in their sports Hall of Fame, like Chick-fil-A chairman Dan Cathy. Some hung up their cleats after high school, like Delta Airlines CEO Ed Bastian, while others, like Condoleezza Rice, claim they weren't that great in their sport. But no matter their skill level, they have all told me that being a part of a team taught them leadership lessons that they still use today. In partnership with Chief Executive Magazine, I'm your host, Don Yeager, here to give you an all-access pass to genuine, authentic, fireside chat-like conversations with today's business icons so that you can create powerful change in your organization. This is Corporate Competitor Podcast. With me for today's episode is Kate Johnson, President and CEO of Lumen Technologies, a company that owns and operates one of the world's biggest, most connected fiber networks. Kate has a strong record in business and digital transformation at Fortune 100 companies. She previously led Microsoft's U.S. division and held executive roles at Oracle and GE. Kate applies lessons from her tennis background to her leadership and enjoys skiing in Deer Valley, Utah, and cheering on her Seattle Seahawks at Lumen Field.
Open to feedback and improvement. Going from bad to good to great to the greatest of all time requires the ability to take feedback on how I'm performing today, not think about it as a criticism, but the unlock to get to the next level. The old corporate America structure, be the smartest one in the room, have all the answers, have mastery over your business, be able to answer every single question as if you've always known the answer, instead of being curious and thinking through it collaboratively. That is the difference between know-it-all and learn-it-all.
Kate, thanks for joining us.
It's great to be here, Don. Thanks for having me.
You know, you had some insight in an interview that you did with Medium.com, where you said that true leadership is about the effort to get it right instead of just aiming to be right. Can you elaborate on where you really grew to understand it and why it became so important to you?
For sure. So I grew up in corporate America where that philosophy was not the case.
Right.
In a boardroom, you had to have your facts straight and you had to be right and you had to know all the answers. That was kind of ingrained in all of us through my consulting career. And then in the various commercial roles that I had, it was all about mastery.
Right.
But I think that the world is just changing so rapidly. And we talk about VUCA, and it's kind of an overused term, but volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity, that is the way. That is every day. And anybody who thinks they have all the answers is going to be in a bit of trouble. I think the mindset and the systems that we build have to account for the world around us, which changes every second in very unpredictable ways. So building a culture oriented around leveraging a team to get it right has been the mission and the goal. That's everything from how you show up in a room, full of executive leaders who are trying to think through a problem together or presenting to the board our quarterly results, or even, on an earnings call. We got to be agile. We got to be curious. We have to be flexible. We have to have hypotheses, and we have to have mastery of the data that is available, but leave space to process and to change course quickly, and effectively. We're here to get it right. Whether I was at Oracle trying to work through the acquisition of Sun Microsystems and the launch of, Exadata, being at GE, trying to think through how to launch a digital business, and then working for and with Satya Nadella at Microsoft, rolling out Dare to Lead at Lumen with Brene Brown, and this orientation around the mindset of if you're not open to other ways of doing and thinking, you're going to get stuck if you're wrong. Okay, the problems in the telco industry are big. and they're complex.
Mm-hmm.
And if they were easy to solve, somebody would have solved them by now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not going to be one person that has all the answers. The company that figures out how to tap into the value of these assets the fastest, that's the company that's going to win. Not knowing exactly what the answer is, you set the whole thing up to discover and capture opportunities as quickly as possible.
How do you put that in place? How do you get people to start mind shifting with you?
It's such a great question. It's really hard. There's no one right answer. You have to be committed. You have to be clear. Our operating principles as a company are team trust and transparency. The common denominators of companies that successfully go through transformation, they have courage, they have a growth mindset, they have great communication, they're customer obsessed. We talk about all these things and we've mapped them against who we are versus who we need to be and how we need to behave. You're not going to say, take the hill and then just run towards the hill. You've got to be very specific about what hill. You got to give everybody the tools to get up the hill, etc. Carol Dweck wrote an incredible book, Mindset, A New Psychology for Success.
Mm-hmm.
I've read it a bunch of times. She talks about business leaders, sports leaders, politicians, etc., all being oriented around open to feedback and improvement. And that's the key, Dom. Going from bad to good to great to the greatest of all time,
Mm-hmm.
that requires the ability to take feedback on how I'm performing today and not think about it as a criticism, but the unlock to get to the next level.
Right.
That shift in orientation is everything.
Mm.
The old corporate America structure, be the smartest one in the room, have all the answers, have mastery over your business, be able to answer every single question as if you've always known the answer, instead of being curious and thinking through it collaboratively. That is the difference between know-it-all and learn-it-all. Satya really infused a sense of learn-it-all, deep curiosity in every moment of every day, whether he's with a customer asking about their business and their outcomes, whether he's with an employee asking about their work. And that orientation is critical to every person at Lumen now. We want to create a learning culture where it's okay not to have all the answers.
Mm.
It also has to be delivered in the right way.
That's so true.
So we are teaching our people, hey, feedback's a gift. And, everybody kind of rolls their eyes. Well, oh, isn't it about criticism? No, it's not. It's the unlock for the future. And here's the right way to deliver it, managers. Anybody who's a people manager needs to go through Dare to Lead training, got to have the right mindset. The person needs to be ready and open for the feedback. There are some words that are more effective than others in conveying these things. You got to approach it from both sides with this, hey, tell me more about your point of view and tell me more about what's going on in your life and in your role so that I can help you with this unlock.
It's funny. In our little company, we have a sign on the wall out here that says feedback is the breakfast of champions.
That's right.
We absolutely believe it. So I love that. You've had the chance to work with some incredible leaders.
Mm-hmm.
Gosh, sitting in the room with some of those leaders, capturing their mindset has to be just, forget the PhD. That's
front row seat to some pretty amazing moments in industry.
Yeah.
And I've learned something from all of them. Stafford Katz, working closely with her at Oracle, and Larry Ellison, of course, learning how to acquire and integrate like a machine. That was really formative. Working with Jeff, our vision on digital at GE obviously didn't work out, was premature. I learned a whole lot from that too, because it wasn't a major success, and think through that with grace. And he was an incredible leader and imparted so much wisdom to all of us. But I mean, the one big influencer in my career forevermore will be Satya Nadella. I had a front row seat to how he transformed a market, how he transformed a company. Gosh, did I learn a lot from him. I'm incredibly grateful, very close and in touch still. And I have told him, hey, look, I'm stealing some of your tricks using your playbook. And he's like, well, that's a compliment. So thank you. So he's been great.
That's awesome. You delivered a commencement at the University of California in which you had a quote. You said, look both ways before you cross the street. And you called it the best advice you ever received.
Yeah.
Like, why would you offer that during a commencement address to a bunch of University of California graduates?
To a bunch of smarty pants? Yeah, because it ties to everything we just talked about. It ties to growth mindset. It ties to this notion of getting right. It's like, look at every problem from both sides,
Right.
period. Different perspectives are critical. And we learn that as kids, toddlers, and kindergartners. But a lot of times we forget it. And of course, we're having this conversation during a time where not a lot of people are willing to look at both sides of
anything.
Right. So I like to boil it down to really simple lessons. And I think that that's one that will apply. And I actually wrote one of my college essays about that.
No kidding.
Yeah, I did.
It also translates into athletics as well. And I know you grew up in a traditional Irish Catholic family. Your parents were teachers.
Mm-hmm.
You were on the track team, the tennis team. We love the pictures that we were able to find in your high school yearbook. How did participating in sports help shape the way you think about teamwork, about leadership, as you were preparing for this incredible career?
Number one, it kept me out of trouble and focused on something other than just academics. Physical activity is still a huge part of my life because it's about balance. And I love to ski. I love to play golf, basically anything outside. I love to hike. But as a kid growing up, I loved to compete. I loved to win. I hated to lose. I needed to learn how to lose in a more graceful manner. My parents were very good at imparting that kind of feedback. I really came from a very competitive family. My mother and aunt were national champions swimmers. Everybody in my family had to join the swim team, and, it wasn't a choice. Preferably, you would join it and win your age group. That kind of orientation, I think, served me well. It set a context for thinking, I think, in the right way. Now, I had a heck of a lot to learn, and I let go of athletics when I went into college. I wasn't good enough at anything in order to carry it forward, but always sort of stayed with the mindset of what a great break from academia or from my job is to immerse myself in sport.
Is there a moment from the court or the track that really stand out to you? Something that you remember, an achievement or a loss?
Uh-huh. I would sort of hearken back to my days of throwing the javelin. I was good, but I was not great. And my coach was incredibly frustrated. He found it difficult to give me feedback and to have me internalize it and use it. I was kind of all about the muscle, the grit. I didn't really think about form and the art. That always sort of stuck with me, that I was kind of disappointing him and I didn't really get it. And then there was this moment, Don, about, 7 or 8 years ago. I was a good skier. I was not a great skier. And my husband is a great skier. And I was just limiting where we could go together on the mountain based on my skill or lack thereof. And I asked him, I said, hey, will you teach me how to level up because I'm ready? And he was like, absolutely not. Oh, wow. Wasn't expecting you to say that. The complexities of marriage, you can imagine, feedback, husband, wife. He wasn't really up for it or whatever. And I said, hey, hang on a second. This is really important to me. Number one, I want to be a better skier for us. Number two, I want to be better at taking feedback in a way that is constructive. So help me with this. He was like, okay, but there got to be rules. Like, I'm out if there's any sort of emotional baggage that comes along with this. I was like, perfect. That's great. That's your boundary. And my boundary is you can give me no more than 3 things to work on at any one time. Only 3 things. Like, have you ever been coached by somebody and they give you 72 things and you're like,
oh yeah,
I can't change the way that I swing the bat, the way that I swing the tennis racket, the way that I move on the court, just 3 basics. And he gave me 3 things. Long story short, I can ski anywhere on the mountain. He really helped me break through, not just skiing, but also understanding that taking feedback needs to be easy for the person giving it to you. And if you can create that safety and those boundaries of what are the rules for this, it can be extremely impactful.
Do you apply those 3 things rule when you're giving feedback in business as well?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I never do a development plan with somebody that has more than 3. I don't think you can work on more than 3. Now, that said, if my senior leadership team were here, they'd be like, well, then why are we working on 5 priorities? And it's a good question. It's fair, but we need to do those 5 things. So yeah, I think 3 is the magic number for changing your own game. If you take 5 or 7 priorities, whatever the number is, and you sprinkle them around the company, I hope that nobody's working on more than 3 of those.
I love it. The idea that in your conversation with your husband, you had the presence to recognize that that was the limit. Like he's saying, here's my boundary.
Yeah,
Okay, that's good. But here's my boundary. Don't go beyond here. I can't be your student.
that's right.
That's pretty powerful ability to articulate the limits.
We have been married for almost 34 years, so we've learned a couple things.
You figure limits out.
Yeah.
You know, momentum is a fascinating subject to me. I'm actually writing a book on the science of momentum, studying the art and science of how to navigate it organizationally in sports and other things.
Look, so first of all, I have an electrical engineering degree. I've taken many physics classes. I love physics. It explains how the universe works. So this notion deeply rooted in science, you're always going to win me over. So I literally can't wait for your book. Don, hurry. Okay.
Okay.
In a transformation, inertia and momentum are incredibly important. Objects in motion stay in motion. Objects at rest stay at rest unless there's an external force. A match in high school, tennis, I was playing doubles. We were up in the 3rd set, 5-0, and we lost 7-5. I can literally remember most of the match. I've tried to put it out of my head 64 million times, but I had an unlock. Roger Federer just did Dartmouth's graduation speech. It was fabulous.
Yep.
One of the things he talked about was being in the moment, being present during every point. It's just a point. Stop thinking about the match. It's about a point. And then he shared that he's won 54.1% of the points that he's played, and he's one of the greatest of all times. And it kind of got me thinking, you bat 300, you're in the Hall of Fame.
Right.
So I kind of lost sight of momentum. As soon as we lost a couple of points, I forgot about our winning momentum and went right into this losing momentum story in my head and kept thinking about winning the match instead of, I got to win this point right now, and this is the best way to go about that.
What's so fascinating about that is you think that's such a simple concept. Be in the point, not the match, and yet not as easy as it sounds.
It really isn't. And that anchoring in winning 1 point at a time is deeply relevant to business, as is this notion of momentum and inertia. I mean, the emotional dynamics, especially, look, we're transforming a company and we're disrupting an industry. It's a battleground. We're competing with some of the biggest and best companies in the world to try and take share and change outcomes for customers. And it's not just the strategy. It's not just the operating plan and the execution. It's not just the talent or the skills or the systems of the process. It's managing the emotional dynamics of a battleground and staying focused on what's going to make the biggest impact. That's the job. And it's really hard. Objects in motion stay in motion. Objects at rest stay at rest unless there's an external force. My belief is the translation of those sets of laws to corporate America is companies that are winning stay winning, and companies that are losing stay losing unless there's some external force. The external force at Lumen and in the telco industry is our transformation. We're getting the people and the talent. We're getting system refresh. We're redesigning our processes. We're redesigning the value that we bring to customers. So that's external force number 1. External force number 2 is this unprecedented spike in demand for terrestrial internet.
Mm-hmm.
So the spark's there, but for spark to ignite, you need kindling, et cetera. It starts with believing you have a right to win. We have a right to win this business. We have one of the world's greatest fiber networks with unique routes and incredible coverage that gives us proximity to where these data centers are being built. And the world keeps talking about this explosive growth in data centers. And they talk about power, they talk about space, and they talk about cooling. But they forget to talk about the fact that these things need to be connected. And if they're not connected, they're just a brick. They're an island. introducing to the world this notion of the fourth key ingredient to explosive growth in data centers, thanks to AI spurring this increase in volume of data, is connectivity. It is fiber. And let's talk about what that means to this company that's been sort of rooted in a declining market that now is deeply relevant to the future of the hyperscalers, to the future of social platforms, to the future of cloud companies. That's the spark. That's the shift. We're prepared to capture that opportunity in a way that no other company in the industry is. And we're super excited. And what I feel and see every day is a very significant shift in momentum. We're overcoming that inertia that kind of had us rooted in decline to start winning. But my job right now, if you talk about getting it right versus being right, is to make sure that the 25,000 plus people of Lumen lean into that shift with me. I need more velocity, and we're a 25,000 person mass company. They got to lean in with me so that we can increase that number and go faster.
Wow, I love it. One of the things that's really stood out to me is Brian Stevenson, the author. Mm-hmm. I understand the advice he gave you shifted your approach to empathy in the workplace. Mm-hmm. Can you maybe unpack that a little bit for us?
For sure. So I was new to Microsoft, had this team of big leaders that had been there for a long time. And I wanted to find a way to get them to be more vulnerable. I was trying various things. And what I found is people are most vulnerable when they're learning, because they have to kind of say, I don't know the answer to that.
Right.
So I thought, okay, let's go learn something together. We had a few African-American leaders on our team, and I sat with them and got their permission, their endorsement. I said, I want the team to learn about the history of race in the United States, because I think it'll be really impactful to fuel our understanding and empathy for building more diverse teams. They were all in. We called Brian Stevenson, who's kind of world renowned for making the biggest impact on driving inclusive environments and things like that, changing the rule of law with his cases of protecting the underserved all the way at the Supreme Court level. He's kind of like the zenith.
He's a big deal.
Right. So we spent a day and a half going through his museum. I spent time with him, and I asked him this question. And I said, hey, you're driving empathy at scale for the unserved and the underserved humans in the United States of America. I'm doing it in corporate environment. You got any wisdom for me? And he gave me a formula. He said the way to drive empathy at scale has a couple different components. He talked about proximity, he talked about narrative, and he talked about hope, among other things. He's like, you can't really empathize with human or an issue or a problem unless you get really close to it. Mm-hmm. That's really important for leadership, to be okay with diving all the way down into it so you can deeply understand it. And that's not something that a lot of leaders do. Once they kind of escape the ranks of level 1, 2, 3, 4, and they're up in the 7, 8 atmosphere, they forget to go back. Mm-hmm. Get close to these problems, get close to your people if you want to figure out what they're experiencing. The second thing is narrative, and it's the power of storytelling. If you want to be a great commercial force in any industry, the art of storytelling is critical. There's got to be a problem, there's got to be a climax, and there's got to be an outcome and resolution. And if you can embed that in how customers use and gain value from your products and services, you're going to find people are more interested when you show up on stage or wherever. And then the last piece of it is hope. Think about Brian defending injustice in some of the more complex and really disappointing situations in the world. And yet he always does so with a positive lens. He brings a positive view of the art of the possible, of what could be, and creates this sense of hope such that it's worth taking the time to follow him and to sign on for these really hard journeys, because he can paint the picture of what it looks like at the end if he's successful. That really stuck with me. It was like, okay, so if I'm trying to build a more diverse workforce, if I'm trying to help transform a business under Satya's leadership, this notion of creating empathy at scale inside and outside the company, I'm going to break my plans down into these 3 pieces. How do I get close to problems? How do I storytell to get people to understand the problems? And then how do I create hope to get them to follow and get escape velocity out of, one level of performance to the next?
Wow. Proximity, narrative, hope. You're right. Because too often in a situation, we're stuck in the, gosh, let's just keep talking about the problem.
Right.
Hope is such an important element of that journey if you're going to be able to do it. But it starts with proximity. And I want to ask you, you use the phrase, leaders forget to go back.
Yeah.
How do you remind yourself to go back?
So you got to figure out like what your starting point is. And if you're a new leader coming into a company, you need to get close to the people who have the answers. And that's the people doing the work on the ground.
Mm.
And my assignment is completely different than the prior management team. The prior management team was told, hey, keep this thing going for as long as possible. And we're an income stock. You got to keep paying the dividend. So you're going to put a survival mentality in place. You want to lose last. And by the way, that is a strategy in a declining market. You got secular headwinds and everybody's revenue is declining on that old copper base. And you want to keep paying a dividend. You want to lose last. You want to be the last company standing. That is not my assignment. In November of 2022, the board of Lumen hired me to transform the company. We agreed the only way to do that was to pivot to growth. We had to cut the dividend and we had to set up a new mission and a new strategy and a new operating plan and a completely new leadership team in order to get value from the fiber network. How I'm leading the company versus prior administrations, it's really an apple and an orange. I do things called city swings where I go into a city and I talk to all of our employees, I talk to customers, I talk to partners, and I talk to analysts. And it's very formulaic. It's a couple of days and it's these immersions. That's really sort of inside out and outside in. Inside our company to understand where we are in the journey of transforming it, I go by layers. So I spend an enormous amount of time with the VP and SVP community when I first got here and said, like, tell me everything. How are you thinking about my joining? How are you thinking about our new mission? How are you thinking about where we are? And they give you one lens. But you got to go all the way through the director community, the manager community, and the individual contributor community to get the full story. So I have what I call employee forums. And I started with really small groups, 6 to 10 people. Don, at first, when you're a new CEO and you come in and you have 6 to 10 directors, they're like, I'm not going to tell you what I'm actually thinking. Like, this is terrifying.
Yeah.
But you demonstrate the get it right mindset. You get curious. You tell them mistakes you've made. You own up to it, et cetera. And you try and create a space that encourages bravery and courage to tell you the truth, to speak truth to power. And the forums that I was having with all the different employees in the first year are completely different than the ones that I'm having now.
Mm-hmm.
Now I've been able to augment the size. I go anywhere from 30 to 50 employees at a time.
Wow. You can get feedback in a 30 to 50 person room?
I can. They're very courageous. And I always have to sort of like, drink a tall glass of optimism before I go in because I'm going to get the truth. And the truth is hard. Our systems aren't there yet. Our processes aren't there yet. We're in the middle of one of the more complicated corporate turnarounds in history. I believe deeply in my heart we're going to win, but it's hard. And you have to be willing to hear the hard truths that even though X, Y, and Z is working well, PDQ is still not. And you have to take your breath and say one thing at a time. Stay with me, you guys. We're going to knock these things out. And they see the progress on one side, and then they get the courage to bring the next thing to you. But it's a little tiring. Could be a little exhausting.
Yeah. I love the differentiation between playing not to lose, playing to win. My guess is when you're up 5-0 in the third set.
Ouch.
Sorry. But at a certain place, you start playing not to lose.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. It's a great point.
As opposed to worrying about playing to win.
Yeah.
How do you create that mind shift? I mean, you're brought in to do it. So you're walking in the door with a different mindset.
Yeah.
But you're going to lead people who have been in a particular mindset for some time. How can you do that when you're a new leader walking into an environment?
In a transformation, if you're going to have get it right mentality and you're playing to win, you have to have the courage to excavate the unsaid.
Wow.
That is the trick. That's why I have those employee forums. You got to excavate the why. I can give you thousands of examples of relentless curiosity about the next question, the next question, the next question, to finally get to a place where an employee, a people manager, a big leader, it doesn't matter who it is, finally say, I don't know why we do it that way. I think it's just the way we've always done it. And then you've gotten to the end of the line and you can say, it's a new day and we're playing to win. And that's not how we get there. What got us here won't get us there. And I'm so glad that you told me that it was prior business policy that was guiding you in this direction. We got a new plan, we got a new strategy, and a new set of policies. And playing to win means we are going to take that risk and go after this because we have a right to win.
What do you pour in your cup of optimism?
An Americano. So
Americano? Okay.
That's where it all starts.
You should bottle that stuff. I mean, it's clearly working for you.
So Don, in all seriousness, I did take a sabbatical between Microsoft and GE, and I spent my time in leadership and mindfulness courses.
No kidding.
This notion of spirituality and my purpose. I love to lead, but what truly is the purpose that I serve? I think it's leading in a unique way, making more space for women and bringing in this notion that you can transform a company by starting with the people. We're rebuilding Lumen from the people up. That is not the way most transformation stories have been told in the past.
Right.
Well, it starts with them. They're the ones that wake up every day and make a decision. Am I going to do it the old way or am I going to lean into the new way? The new way is scary. I might make a mistake. I might feel awkward. I might be embarrassed, but I got to dive into it. I've got to use this sort of systemic resilience we're trying to build, et cetera. And my cup of optimism comes with recognizing every inch forward of progress that we make goes into that cup. And a lot of times it's driving awareness. A lot of times in those forums, I'm telling them something that I see that their management chain hasn't told them yet. Something positive, a breakthrough. And I got to tell you, focusing on the people when they haven't been focused on in a really long time, there's a lot of progress in just doing that and how different this culture is today versus a couple of years ago. It makes up for not winning enough yet. When we then deliver fundamentally needed capabilities for data center growth to serve the world in an era of AI, that's just going to be icing on the cake.
I love it. You made a reference to your three important pieces: team, trust, transparency. So I'd love to lean into a question we've asked every guest that we've had in almost 200 episodes now. I'm a sports guy. I talk to a lot of business leaders, speak at a lot of business organizations, and everybody talks about their team. Our team is going to do this, but you and I have been part of teams. We know often that's a way overused and inappropriately used word because most of the business teams I'm talking to are a group of people that are drawing the same paycheck from the same company, and that's it.
Right.
What are some key things you lean into as a leader that help create team?
It's a great question. The biggest barrier to team performance is silo. It's about thinking that my goals, my priorities, my outcomes, I'm just going to focus on those because I can be successful in that vein. The silos grow thicker and thicker over time. And the only antidote to the silo is relationship. Relationship has to have empathy, frequent communication, and probably most significantly shared outcomes. At Lumen, we are the amalgamation of many different companies. And when I started, I used to say, hi, my name's Kate. What's your name? And they would immediately tell me their name and then their jersey. I'm from CenturyLink.
Right. Yeah.
Guys, I don't care where you came from. You're Lumen now. So you don't need to tell me that journey. Tell me what you're working on. Tell me how you're supporting our mission. I'm very interested in hearing more for you, but not that you're wearing a different jersey than the guy who's sitting right next to you, because you both are wearing a new jersey now. So people who've been here a really long time don't have the relationship that transcends jersey from the old companies. We had to start working on putting our people in cross-functional groups where they got to know each other. In order to accelerate relationship, I mean, it takes time to develop it. We allocate time to be in person every month, and we allocate a certain amount of those meetings towards relationship development, personality tests, and shared the results. We talk about preferences. We talk about family stuff. We talk about what's going on in your function to drive empathy.
So you actually have a percentage of these meetings that is held sacred to talk about something not related to building the world's greatest network.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it is starting to pay off. Look, everybody's got these crazy things going on in their lives, whether it's kids graduating from college, whether it's health issues with spouses, like really big life impacting things. And to ignore them is a miss, but to bring them in whatever way they're comfortable. We don't mandate that you have to tell some sort of secret or whatever. You know, you set up your own boundaries, but give us a look at where you are in life and journey. Why'd you come to Lumen? How does it fit into your life story? Tell us that one. That's always like super interesting.
I love it. You know, I can see over your shoulder, you've got a Seattle Seahawks 12th man jersey.
That's right.
One of my favorite people is Pete Carroll. Loved working with him. The NFL stadium there in Seattle is named for Lumen.
Lumen Field.
Lumen Field. Love it. And you had a memorable experience at Lumen when you rode a scooter across the stage to Coach Carroll.
So Coach Carroll, the first time I met him, I was actually at Microsoft. We have had several scooter races, he and I, several. Coach Carroll and Mike Gervais have a leadership company, and they work very closely with Microsoft. And we were so lucky to go through that training. I was relatively new to the company. I went to meet with Pete. His office is full of different sports things, basketball, hoops, scooters, you know, the whole thing. And from my perspective, I said to him, do you encourage play? And he said, no, Kate, I encourage competition. And I started laughing and I was like, okay, fair enough. But also you use these tools, I would imagine, to sort of unlock everybody. He's like, no, always compete is my philosophy. And I would love to share that with you. And I said, why, you want to have a scooter race?
You challenged him.
Well, because I love scooters, right? And I had several of them in my office. I use them to disarm people. Hey, you want to go for a scooter ride around the office? And people are like, is she crazy? No, well, actually, I am a little bit crazy. But also, if you're riding around on a scooter, it is almost impossible to take yourself too seriously. And that's the trick. So I said, hey, scooter race. He was like, oh, absolutely. Go. And I was like, wait, I'm wearing heels. And he said, no whine. He screamed at me, no whining. And I thought, oh my God, this is like for real. So I started zooming down the hallway and I figured he's a football coach, like full contact's not a problem, right? So I used every imaginable technique to win that race. I'm not going to tell you who won or lost. I will tell you that there were several wipeouts and a lot of laughing along the way. So when he came to visit me at Microsoft in my office, he said, you want to do it again? Because I had a bunch of scooters on the wall in this incredible scooter rack. I said, sure, but I know how you play. So go. And I was the one that set the tempo or whatever and zoomed around it. And you should see the employees in a sea of cubes. Pete Carroll zooming through the halls of Microsoft on a scooter. OSHA was not thrilled, but we did have a lot of fun. And he taught me an incredible amount.
Yep. One of the things that I love is that we both had settled in years earlier because of our relationships with John Wooden. We both had great ones.
Yeah.
Our two favorite words were compete and finish. I literally have shirts that say those two things. Those are the two things we got to do each and every day. Be grateful for the opportunity to compete.
Amen.
Kate Johnson, I cannot thank you enough. I'm grateful for the opportunity. And I thank you today for being a corporate competitor with us.
Thank you, Don. I had a blast and also learned a few things along the way. See you soon.
That was spectacular. Now, if you recognize the name Kate Johnson, I want you to know that we actually had a previous Kate Johnson on our podcast. She's a leader with Google and was an Olympian in episode 41. Not the same Kate Johnson, but this one really got me going today. Number one, her major philosophy, get it right versus be right. If you want to get it right, as opposed to be a master of your subject, You have to be agile, curious. You have to have flexibility. You have to want to be a learn-it-all. If you want to go from bad to good to great to GOAT, you have to see feedback not as criticism, but as unlocking the next level. Boy, unbelievable. I actually told our producer, Savannah, that that may well be the best quote I've heard in forever. The second one, playing off of that, is how you take feedback. She told a great story about her javelin coach in high school who kept talking to her about the form and the art of the process of throwing the javelin. But Kate had it in her mind that it was muscle. Muscle was what it mattered. And because she couldn't take his feedback, she never really progressed. And it frustrated him as coach. Speaking about frustrating, my third great takeaway was the story of her husband and the skiing lessons. She wanted to be a better skier. She asked her husband to help her. And he said, no, I'm not going to be your coach because it gets too emotional. And she committed to being a good student. But she said, I don't want to be your student if you give me more than 3 things to work on at one time. I love that. Asking for advice, but also understanding what she can process and what works. But the truth is, most of us can't process more than 3 ideas. And so she aims to have no more than 3 priorities on development plans. Number 4, when coming into a new organization, she talked about having the courage to excavate the unsaid. Ask the next question. Ask somebody why we do something or how we do something. Tell me more. Tell me more. Get to that one place where somebody says, well, we do that because that's the way we've always done it. And that's when you can start making changes within an organization. And then the last one, Kate Johnson's cup of optimism. I want to have one of those. She talked about rebuilding Lumen from the people up, and that she has this enormous optimism that they just have the right people, because those people are going to wake up every day, she said, and they're going to make a decision. Am I going to do it the old way, or am I going to lean into this new way that I'm being asked to think about things? As those people make those decisions, that's when Kate's cup of optimism continues to fill itself. Unbelievable lessons, unbelievable journey, the people she's had the chance to learn from. And today we got a chance to learn from her. I can't think of anything better. I appreciate you. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a rating and review on Apple and Spotify. Feedback helps us spread the insights of our guests to a wider audience. It actually increases our ratings. Thank you so much for those who have done so in the past. And catch new episodes every Wednesday. Subscribe at corporatecompetitorpodcast.com to be the first to get a chance to listen. And as a thank you gift, I will send you a chapter from one of my best-selling books. Stay connected with me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. My handle is @DonYaeger, DonYaeger. And until next week, I appreciate you.